BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for the Farming Today podcast. I'm Kaz Graham, and in this edition, we begin a special series following the journey of a loaf of British bread from seed to field to mill to the shop shelf. And a judicial review gives Grimsby the thumbs up to build the UK's first onshore salmon farm. First, though, most commercial poultry farmers keep chickens for either egg laying or meat production, and that specialisation is the way that modern poultry farming has operated for decades. But does it have to? A group of farmers are now looking into the use of dual-purpose heritage poultry breeds that could be used for both eggs and meat. They say that if these birds were farmed more widely, it would reduce the need to cull male chicks, which aren't wanted in egg-laying flocks. 6 farms are taking part in field trials run by the Innovative Farmers Group, including Planton Farm in Shropshire. It's a mixed farm where Annie Rayner has both broilers, that's meat-producing chickens, as well as egg layers, and she explained what they're trying to achieve.
So the idea behind the trial is really to look at the more dual-purpose breeds, so ones that both lay eggs and also put down meat, in the idea that they would hopefully be a bit more of a sustainable bird. So we're thinking less extreme birds are going to have a greater resilience, potentially to things like disease and such. We're hoping that they'll be less reliant on protein. So imported protein is obviously quite a big challenge in terms of sustainability and climate change due to the way it's grown. These more kind of heritage breeds might be able to make better use of a more diverse diet. So we're looking at that within the trial too, as well as kind of the productivity outcomes of the birds.
What have you discovered so far?
Well, they have really good welfare. Obviously, they're not under these kind of huge productivity stresses. So their walking ability is much better than a kind of conventional broiler would be. They're not quite at the point of laying eggs, so we don't know about their egg production, but they seem to be quite active.
Do you think this is a system that could only really work for smaller poultry farmers?
In Europe, they are growing dual-purpose birds. So because of the ban on male chick culling, there is a market of dual-purpose males being grown for meat consumption and production. So it's not only going to be suitable for smaller scale.
But how realistic, though, do you think this method of production really is, given rising demand for chicken from consumers? Because, after all, it is a cheap meat now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it would have to be a different approach to the type of chicken and the cost of that bird in the end. So it's not going to compete ultimately with a kind of fast-growing broiler if we're talking about the meat. The cost is ultimately going to be the barrier in terms of matching the current markets. But ultimately, food is potentially too cheap in that it's externalising a lot of the costs to the kind of environment and to the welfare of those birds. And actually, we need to be looking at not externalising those costs and actually paying for the true cost of the food that we're producing.
That's Annie Rayner. Now, we've got a great series this week. Each day, we're going to be following the journey of a loaf of British bread from seed to the field to the mill and eventually the shelf in the shop. It's a complicated business, as you can imagine. The wheat used for bread has to be high in protein and have specific qualities to make good dough. It's known as Group 1 wheat. Anna Hill is our tour guide, and her first stop on our loaf of bread journey was at Seed Breeders KWS in Triplo in Cambridgeshire, where she joined wheat specialist Olivia Bacon, who develops bread-making wheat varieties.
We're standing here in a glass house under these LED lights. You simulated the growing conditions for this wheat. This isn't the very first stage, is it?
We have multiplied that single seed up a little bit, and then the breeders will come in here and select the varieties that they think are best. So that will be judged on disease, height, specific weight, all of those things that make a good wheat.
Now, the farmer needs to grow his bread wheat very specifically for the miller. One thing that they're really keen on is protein.
Most millers, the specification for protein is 13% protein. The importance of the protein is to increase the strength in the bread. And for us, breeding a Group 1 bread-making wheat is not the most straightforward because of that factor. It needs lots of different things, like it has to have good water absorption as well. So yield, disease resistance, specific weight is also very important.
What's that?
So it's just how bold the grain is. It just helps, again, in the milling process. Also, it has to have a good Hagberg falling number.
Now you've got to explain this.
So basically you make your dough out of your wheat variety and then you hang it in a lab. So we have the capability of doing that here. You hang it and it's basically how many seconds it takes for that dough to stretch and hit the table, basically.
So the elasticity, really.
Yeah, so the strength of the dough, yeah.
How difficult is it to breed all these traits into a bread wheat?
It's extremely difficult. So we see something called protein dilution. So the more yield you get, it can dilute the protein. So it's about getting that really fine balance. And bread making wheats aren't really known for having that high yield, but it's because you're after that really high protein. So yes, it's a very fine balance.
What about the choice that farmers have to put in their field? I know some people believe that the choice hasn't been that great recently.
So the choice has been quite limited up until recently. There are three main varieties that are sort of the mainstay in Group 1 is Zayat, Skyfall and Crusoe. All three sort of have their own challenges. So Skyfall and Zayat is yellow rust, Crusoe is brown rust. Whereas we've had two new additions onto the recommended list, one with SY Cheer, which was last year, and then now with KWS Vibe. And both of those varieties add really good disease resistance, which is what the other three were lacking.
We're looking at some of these varieties of wheat that you've been growing. They're all in separate pots, aren't they?
They can come out looking very different. So as you can see here, some are really tall. Some actually haven't grown at all, which will obviously won't make it.
Yeah, there's one down there, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's really only a few inches high and everything else is over a foot. Climate change is challenging farmers on the ground. How can you anticipate what farmers need?
It takes us sort of 8 to 10 years to breed a new variety. So actually, without planning to prepare for climate change, we sort of are anyway, because that variety has been through 8 to 10 years of different seasons to make it onto the recommended list. So yeah, we are breeding for climate change, and each year has been so different. This year we've had a dry spring. Last year we had one of the highest disease pressures that we've ever had. So it's about looking at the varieties that come through each of those years well.
And tomorrow, Anna will be out in the field with a bread wheat farmer in Suffolk. Now, the town of Grimsby was built on fish, known in the early 20th century as the world's largest fishing port, with extensive processing facilities and a vast fleet catching cod and haddock. The town was always at the forefront of fishing innovation, and now it could become home to the UK's first large-scale onshore salmon farm. A judicial review has upheld North East Lincolnshire Council's decision to grant it planning permission. An animal rights group had challenged the development on fish welfare grounds. Lara King from BBC Humberside has been following the story, and she's been telling me about the proposed salmon farm.
So it's Aquacultured Seafood Limited. They're behind this proposal. It's a £120 million proposal to build what would be the UK's first large-scale on-land salmon farm in Grimsby. And it's not actually far from Grimsby docks. It'll be around 10 acres and it'll process around 5,000 tonnes of salmon a year. The company says the site at Old Clee in Grimsby is the, and I'm quoting here, optimum location for a UK-based onshore aquaculture farm, because they say there's a strong knowledge of fishing and food processing nearby. Now, the fish are farmed in big indoor tanks, which the company says minimises the risks of things like pollution, parasites, and also fish escaping. And they also say that means that fish welfare would be optimised.
Well, that's what they say, but animal rights campaigners don't agree, and that's why they brought this judicial review, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. Animal Equality UK, they brought the legal challenge 2 years ago. That's when planning went through because of animal welfare concerns. And they say they won't back down despite losing their challenge. They say similar farms in other countries have failed. Abigail Penny is the group's executive director.
This mega farm represents an entirely new form of factory farming, with only around 100 or so of these farms existing globally. These on-land sites are untested, unwanted and highly experimental. This proposal is bad for the environment, bad for the local community and bad for animals.
Abigail Penny there from Animal Equality UK. Now, they say this isn't a defeat, but it's rather a bittersweet victory because despite upholding North East Lincolnshire Council's planning approval, the High Court judge actually ruled that animal welfare concerns could be a key planning consideration in future cases.
Has the company that's building the farm responded yet? Have they actually said anything?
Yep, aquaculture, they've said the fishing industry had long been a source of employment for North East Lincolnshire residents, providing not only income but a sense of pride and community. And they go on to say we intend to ensure that continues. We've also heard from North East Lincolnshire Council. They approved the planning application 2 years ago. The council sees it as an opportunity in innovative methods of sustainable farming, along with creating economic investment and employment. Now, this is the leader of North East Lincolnshire Council, Philip Jackson.
The outcome of the legal challenge clearly shows that the council did follow all the required procedures with regard to the planning application. This new salmon farm is great news for Grimsby, Cleethorpes and North East Lincolnshire as a whole. It'll bring 100 well-paid full-time jobs to North East Lincolnshire. It's a multi-million-pound development that, again, will put us at the forefront of the seafood sector and will provide a vital raw material in terms of fresh salmon for our seafood processing sector.
The leader of North East Lincolnshire Council, Philip Jackson. Now, we don't have a timescale yet on when the salmon farm will be built, but the campaigners, they're not going away. Animal Equality UK have vowed to continue their fight to the bitter end, and they aren't the only critics here, with nearby residents raising concerns about its environmental impact and also its proximity to their homes. And then there's also the issue of the displacement of wildlife on the site.
That's Lara King from BBC Humberside. And that is all from us for today. I'm Kaz Graham. The producer is Rebecca Rooney. And the programme is a BBC Audio Bristol production.